Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Saturday Fur Trapping Hour. Today we have a special guest with us, and I'm going to turn it over to him right now and let him introduce himself.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. This is Alan Probst. I do the North American Trapper television show and run my company, North American Trapper, just basically trying to teach people how to control problem animals on their property, nest raiders, coyotes, things of that nature, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. So, how did you get started trapping?
My whole family, my dad, my grandfather, my uncles, from as long as I can remember. I caught my first muskrat at the age of 7, and I call it the fever. I caught the fever at that point. But growing up, it was just a part of every fall and winter, whether it was fox. We didn't have a lot of coyotes. Well, we didn't have any coyotes hardly at that point in the 70s in Pennsylvania, very few. But, fox and coons and beaver and things like that, we were out there chasing them pretty much the whole fall and winter.
Yes, sir. So, how has the trapping industry evolved since you started?
Well, it's evolved in a couple different directions, good and bad. I remember being back in the 70s, if somebody, where I grew up in Pennsylvania, if somebody was a trapper, they were pretty well-respected outdoorsmen and held in high regard because, it was the mentality back then. And then, the antis, whether it's PETA or the Humane Society and those type of organizations really started, their advertising and changing some attitudes, which, in essence has kind of put a black mark on trappers, which it's just false. I mean, trappers are out there trying to help animals, and yes, it's a crow kindness to the ones that are taken, but the overall health of the population will thrive. To me, trapping is tradition. It's something that has been around. I mean, it really is what built the West. The beaver trappers exploring the West in the beaver rush there in the 1820s and 30s. And, it's just that one-on-one with nature, that tradition is something that, I hope everybody can experience at some point.
Yes, sir. So how has it evolved for the bad, as you mentioned earlier?
Well, just the overall attitude of trapping, in the public eye has over the last 30, 40 years through, as I said, PETA and other organizations putting a lot of false information out there, and that's really where we're fighting an uphill battle, trying to educate the masses with the need for trapping. I mean, trapping's always going to be here. We're always going to have problems with animals, especially with human expansion. The more we expand out into the wilderness, the more, whether it's pet animal conflicts, whether it's human and wild animal conflicts or anything of that nature. And it's our job to promote it in a good light and explain, whether it's to one person or whether it's to 5,000, explain the benefits and the true, need for it in today's society.
How do you think it has evolved for the good in the past 30 or 40 years?
Well, it's evolved for the good in a lot of ways. One of the main ways is the equipment. The traps that are used today are restraining devices. They're not, every picture you see, with somebody who's maybe against trapping, they show traps with teeth and things of that nature, and that's just not something that is even remotely close to legitimate truth. And the equipment through the BMPs, which are the best management practices. You can do a lot of different things. You triple swivel. Each of the traps that even from the factory now most come with at least 2 swivels, a base swivel and a chain swivel. So it gives the animals a full range of motion, and the cast jaws are less intrusive on an animal. So the equipment, I would say, is probably, in my eyes, the biggest advance that trapping's made in the last 30-40 years. The equipment is just very sound when it comes to a management tool.
Yes, sir. So, do you think the media industry, like the news and modern TV shows and movies, have had a role in painting trapping in a really bad way?
Well, that's obvious. That's who's gotten the biggest amount of attention. Whether it's PETA's campaign, I'd rather go naked, or the propaganda that's put out there. But if you look across the board, pretty much every state, within the conservation departments, uses trapping as a viable management tool. And that's one of the things, like the wolves have been relocated, fishers have been relocated, otters have been relocated. Well, every one of those relocated animals was caught in one of the traps that we're using for daily trapping activities. So if they're good enough to use to relocate animals to different parts of the country, in Canada and North America, there's not an issue that should be brought to the attention of anybody, because they're actually being used for a positive purpose.
Yes, sir. So how can we help the trapping industry? How can we defend it and make sure it's here for generations to come?
Well, just kind of like what you're doing. Just getting information out there and getting people who are qualified to talk about it, and people who are, part of the process to, try and educate people, whether it be, one listener or, like I said, 5,000 listeners. You have to get the positive information out there, and the more, I'm kind of naive, even at 50 years old, to think that the truth will set you free. So if you're telling people the truth and you're, showing it in the positive aspects that trapping provides, I feel that getting that information to people will help in that process. It's not something that you can take lightly, and when you are on the chopping block per se, you have to do things the right way, and you have to do things that promote in a positive aspect. So there's a bunch of different variables when it comes to that, but the more we can educate, the more we can get that information out there, the correct information, that's what we all can do.
Yes, sir. So, switching gears a little bit here, how did the North American Trapper Show come about?
Oh, that's a long story. That's a podcast in and of itself. I was living in Orlando, Florida, and I went to the NRA convention, and I talked to the Outdoor Channel there. This was 2003, and I said, I'd like to do a trapping show. They're like, well, that'd be great. And little did I know that it wasn't going to be an easy road. And then I was also doing a different outdoor show on the Sportsman Channel and the Pursuit Channel, hunting, fishing, trapping, kind of an all-outdoor show. And I called F&T and talked to them, and they didn't really have an interest in being part of that show, but they said if I ever did a trapping show, that they would be interested. And that kind of started the ball rolling. And we ran the North American Trapper Show in 2010 and 11, with F&T being the title sponsor, and then the third year they pretty much took over the executive duties, and we changed the name to F&T's Freedom Outdoors. And that show, was 10 years running. And then my new version, I wanted to do some stuff on my own, and I a couple years ago decided I'm going to bring North American Trapper back and kind of do my own thing. So that's kind of where we're at on that. But, it's almost a 20-year process to actually get that in place.
Yes, sir. So how did you start making your own baits and lures?
Well, we've been doing that since, I saw my dad and my uncles doing that, and my grandfather back in the 70s. So I didn't really dabble in it too much until I came back to Pennsylvania in 2003, and then I started making the stuff for resale in, I think, 06. I put a catalog out, and then, as I said, I didn't have the trapping show at that time, so I didn't really have an avenue to move it, so it kind of got placed on the back burner. But, here, now that I'm doing pretty much my own stuff, I brought them back to the market, and I'm pretty happy with how they've performed over the last couple of years.
So you've done several DVDs, I believe, on using trail cameras with a lot of trail camera footage on it. So can you talk about trail cameras a little bit for us? What are your preferences when you're looking at trail cameras? How to set them up, that kind of stuff? Kind of in a summary. You don't have to go real deep if you don't.
Well, yeah, just in a nutshell, game cameras are, the same way that the deer hunters, pattern their deer, and the big outfitters know where this deer is and that deer is. You can do a lot with game cameras when it comes to trapping. You can, we put game cameras on fake dirt holes with just different baits and lures to see how the animals work the baits and lures, to see if we have something that is, consistently being worked. And, we've got a tremendous amount of catch footage where we have cameras on actual working sets, to where we watch how the animal works the set, how they come in, how they, move around, all the different things. So the same thing that you're doing, trying to spot that big deer with a game camera, you can do a lot of that when it comes to trapping, getting information. And information is what you're always looking for to make you a better trapper, or make you a better hunter, or whatever. But game cameras are definitely an item that can help you pretty much be more successful when you're out in the field.
Yes, sir. So what do you prefer when it comes to game cameras? Do you like your ones with a normal flash or infrared, or what's your preferences there?
Well, I use the Stealth Cam, the 4K, and I like that because it's infrared. You still do, even with the infrared, have some animals notice it, especially if, they're coming in from the other side looking at the camera. There's the green light's going to come on when the infrared's triggered, and you'll see, some coons and foxes, and they'll stop and they'll look right at the camera. Now, it doesn't scare them too much. I haven't noticed a lot of distrust in what the animal's doing at that time as far as the camera's concerned. But I don't like, the deer is different. The flash goes off, the picture's taken, and they're that. But I like the infrared when it comes, and I like cameras. I don't do any stills. I have them all set to video because, going back to what I said, I want to see how they're working the set. I want to see how they're reacting to baits, how much they're driving their muzzle down in the hole to get it. So I like the video, and you can set that The only problem with the video is when you're doing 4K video, that's going to eat up a lot of cards, and it's going to eat up a lot of cards quickly. So you can't just put a camera somewhere and then go check it a month later. You're not going to have anything but the first 2 or 3 nights of clips. You have to consistently, switch your cards out and stuff like that, because we are doing a higher definition video on those.
Yes, sir. So, switching kind of over to gear, what kind of gear you like for trapping? And everybody knows, from at least from watching your TV show, that you use a lot of Duke traps. What do you like most about the Duke brand of traps?
Well, I've had a working relationship with Bill and TA since 2003, and I know there's a lot of people out there, they're gonna, this trap's the best and that trap's the best. Quite honestly, any trap on the market's gonna work for you. I don't care what brand it is, and really, the new Pro Series that Duke has put out, the 550, the 650, the 850's coming out this year for wolves and beaver, are just they're a top shelf trap, and they've over the years, continued to produce quality equipment, and the Duke trap is what I use, and I use it because my relationship with them, and it's, as in my eyes, it's as good a trap, if not better, than a lot of them that are on the market. Plus, they're less expensive. So, for guys that maybe are trying to do things on a budget, they're going to be able to get more Duke traps than they are any other traps, and they're going to work for them just as good, as I said, as any other ones on the market.
So, what is your favorite trap for each species?
Well, mostly I'm concentrating on, at this point in time, coyotes and raccoons and possums, and skunks. We'll throw them into the nest raider category. Most of the places I'm going to trap, I'm there for, 2 purposes. 1, to take their nest raiders out of the equation, and 2, to take as many coyotes as we can to ease the harassment on the deer. What I use for those, obviously for the nest raiders, we're using a tremendous amount of the dog proofs that Duke has, the Duke DPs. Any water situations, I'm using the 1.5 double jaw. I think that's probably the best all-around trap because of the double jaw aspect of it. If you get an animal to put his foot in that, he's going to be there when you go to check. And then when I'm running coyote stuff for canines, the 550 is the only trap that's going in the ground. So the back of the truck really only has 3 different traps at most times, unless, we're doing some beaver stuff. But if I'm out and traveling, it's going to have 550s, DPs, and a few 1.5 double jaws, and that's really all that's going in the ground.
So, what modifications do you do to your coyote traps and nest raider traps?
Well, I don't really do anything modification-wise to the DPs or the 1.5 double jaws. The 1.5 double jaws, once you get them, paying attention, I usually loosen the nut underneath to where the pan just falls down by itself, and that's the paying attention I'm looking for. You once in a while might have to use a pair of pliers and bend the dog in or out so you get a level pan, but that's really all that I'm doing on those. You don't really need to beef up anything on those or the DPs. They already have the built-in swivels. They're going to be easy on the animal. When it comes to the 550, we're not doing much other than I do triple swivel them. So I do take off the factory chain and swivels, and then I use 3 super swivels with heavy-duty number 3 chain in between those to give them 3 swivels, and then, we put the stake on. But there's not a tremendous amount of modifications that you need to do. The only reason I do that swiveling aspect is, 1, it gives another swivel, and also it beefs it up just a little bit. But as far as modifications, I don't do much at all. I don't wax my traps. I do boil them. I boil them a lot. When they are dirty, I do boil them. And just use logwood dye. And that's, I don't think waxing needs to be done if you're going to be doing a lot of boiling, because you're keeping your traps clean. If you keep your trap clean, you're not going to have any problems.
So, do you do any snaring for your coyotes and things of that nature?
I don't do much of that. Here in Pennsylvania, we're not allowed to snare, so I'm not very proficient. That's not one of my, it's I can set snares if I need to, but it's not something that I spend a lot of time doing. One, I cut my teeth in the East, and we don't, do a lot of snaring. Now, we do some cable restraint stuff. My dad is 77 years old. His hands, aren't able to go out there, and plus he's not wanting to pound a lot of sets in the ground, so he sets a lot of cable restraints for Fox, and he does very well at that. So I basically, when it comes to that, I know enough just to get myself in trouble. When I'm on the road and I'm trapping, I'm putting 550s in the ground.
So, when you're putting up your fur, do you prefer wood boards or wire stretchers when you're drying your fur?
I like wood boards just because it's, it's old school. But, the wire stretchers have a place too. There's some guys that like wire stretchers better. They feel it gives them a better, viewing box for when they take their fur. Some people like the wood. I like the wood just because it's pretty much old school. So the old basswood boards is the way that we're going to mostly do that.
So what skinning knives and fleshing knives do you prefer? What brand and style?
Well, I'm using the Weeby stuff to do what fur I do. With that, we have two North American Trapper variations of the Weeby knives coming out this year as well. We got 4-inch powder and one of the exchangeable blades. So we got two different of those coming out. They make really a quality line of all fur handling tools. They got the 8-inch, 12-inch double handle. They also have the tails stripper. They have, the Red Fox, the Vixen, the Arctic Fox. They got 4 or 5 different replaceable blade knives. They got a 3 and 4-inch pelleter, the soft handle. They got a beaver skinning knife. I mean, Weeby has pretty much everything you need to do any fur handling with.
So, what is your prediction for the fur market? Do you see it getting better in the future?
Oh, I don't really even follow. I don't sell a lot of my fur. Most of the fur I get is sent to the tannery and usually given as giveaways and presents and things like that. The fur market, it's tough. It's tough when there's a lot of things that have happened over the last couple of years. And I'm not a fur market prognosticator by any means. I don't know what really truly drives the market from a lot of aspects. But you look at California, where you can't sell fur there now. You look at Canada Goose. They're not going to be carrying their coyote trim parkas, so now you got NAFA that's out of business, which is, that's a company that was in business for over 300 years, and they're out of business. So, I don't know where the fur market is going to go as far as, going and selling your done-up fur at a fur sale. I will say this: I think that there is a value beyond, that market. There's a lot of different people out there that that will buy tan furs for their camps, their house, for home decor, for memories, for a lot of different things. So there is a value, but as far as a traditional, what's the fur market going to be like? I really have no opinion on that because I just do not know.
Yes, sir. So, I know you do a lot of stuff with your North American Trapper Show and store. Trying to get more people involved in the art of trapping. Getting the younger generations, getting started. And so, what would you say to a young person, that's wanting to get started into trapping? What direction would you point them in?
Well, I would, as with anything, if you're, gonna just take it from a hunting standpoint or a fishing standpoint, if you want to get a kid into fishing, you don't take them fly fishing for trophy trout. You take them pan fishing until you catch some sunfish and some bluegills, so you can have some success, starting off. When it comes to trapping, I'm not gonna, tell some kid that's looking to get into trapping or an adult, like, hey, buy some of these 550s and go catch some coyotes. Not the coyotes. I think coyotes are given way too much credit a lot of times, but I'm not going to recommend that a kid starting out go out and try and catch coyotes. So, you want to give them a couple DPs, show them how to put some bait in the DP and catch some coons. Or if you have, places where you have muskrats, get a couple 110s and go out and set some muskrat channels and catch some muskrats. You want them to have success when they first start, so that it drives that fire to want to do it more and to get into it even more. So if a kid's starting out, we want to get a couple dog proofs in his hands and let him get over there by a garbage can or wherever, out in the field, a cornfield or somewhere where there's some coon sign, and let them catch some coons. And that's, I think, the best way to get people involved.
Yes, sir. I know exactly what you're meaning right there, especially when I was getting started trapping. I know that I caught a lot of coons right off the bat, and then I wanted to shift and go right over and try to catch coyotes right off the bat. And I think if I hadn't caught all those coons to begin with and had that spark going, I don't think I would have persisted in trying to trap, because it took me over 3 months to catch a coyote. So you want to get the kid some success. Just like I said, if you're going to take a kid fishing for the first time, you don't want to take them for lunker bass or trophy trout where you actually have to have some finesse and things. Just take them out there, throw a bobber in the water with a red worm on it, and catch some panfish. And then a kid that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, it doesn't matter how big that fish is. They caught a fish. That's all that matters. And it doesn't matter how big the coon is. If you can get out there and catch a couple coons or a couple muskrats, like I said, you can instill that, drive and desire, and give them an opportunity to continue to want to do it moving forward. So, at the last NTA convention, I saw a lot of stuff going around about y'all's kids cave that you put on. How did that go for y'all? Did that go over pretty well?
Yeah, it was a great event. There was a lot of people that had a big part in that. They were showing kids how to make their own sifters and cutting the wood and putting the screen on, and I was there with Rose Moore, who's our youth outreach coordinator. We were giving away, each kid that came in, we gave them a free DVD and a tube trap. And I think I gave away, it was over about 32 dozen traps, I believe. So, we got 32 dozen traps in some kids' hands, and hopefully they'll be out there using them this fall and further into the tradition. But, there was a lot of different activities. Like I said, the kids were doing some archery stuff, and it wasn't just about trapping. It was a lot of different things. They were showing them how to cast a fishing rod and trying to get it in the hoops that were over there. And as I said, they were making sifters, and we gave some traps away. And all in all, I think it was probably the high point of the NTA for a lot of people, especially the kids.
So is this something you'll be doing at future conventions?
Yeah, if they want us to be a part of it, we're definitely not against being a part of that. That's what it's all about. Getting kids involved and furthering that tradition. So yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for being on with us today, Mr. Probst. I really appreciate you supporting us and helping us put another episode out. So before we get off here, are there any statements or anything you'd like to say before you leave here?
No, I appreciate you having me on. Keep doing what you're doing. And hopefully everybody has a great fall and winter, strapping their steel wherever they are.
All right. Thank you again for being on with us today, Mr. Probst.
Absolutely, buddy. You have a great day.
You too. Thank you.